The lyrics we just heard represent the sounds of this holiday season, as our senses are heightened by the mystery of the Spirit incarnated in art. Join us today on Austin Faith Dialogue as we search for this special spirit of the season in a variety of art forms. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. When we think of the holidays this time of year, too often we look at it as a time to shop or to go to parties, but we forget so frequently the message of the season, namely the Word made flesh. And it's such a time when the arts make their particularly rich contribution, from music to painting to poetry. We can find the spirit of the season speaking to us. Just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so too can the Spirit of God take on different forms and meanings for each of us. So with this message in mind, I ask you to enjoy the following solo by Jana Holzmeier as she sings Jesu Bambino.
Child, the Christmas rose, the King. Adore him, Christ the Lord. Oh, come. Oh, come. Oh, come, let us adore him. Let us adore him. Christ the Lord.
It was the artist Constable who made the contrast, sparkle, and gloom in a small part of one country stand as a symbol for the sparkle of the world and of eternity. These words of John Piper we'd like to use as a means of welcoming our artist and art historian today, Mark Smith, to the program. He's now working as an artist in Austin, also served as an assistant dean at the College of Fine Arts at the University of Texas, and as the chairman of the Department of Art at Southwestern University. As an art historian, he's also an expert on the subject of religion in the arts. Mark, we're really looking forward to having you share this time with us today.
Thanks.
And in this season, I think that it perhaps is well to come back to that meaning that we are sharing together in terms of the Word made flesh and incarnated in form that you'd like to maybe tell us about even from prehistoric times.
Sure. I thought I'd give us a little sense of perspective on the ability of human beings to sense this unity between matter and spirit.
Okay.
We might look at some imagery that will illustrate that for us. For example, prehistoric people had not been informed that there was some clear distinction between matter and spirit, and they saw the two united not only in themselves and in all creatures, but in all things around them. And when we look at this cave painting from deep in the interior of a cave, we can imagine their sense of these animals being revitalized by spirit. And the same thing is true of a figurine like this one from ancient Sumeria, the homeland of Abraham, in which these huge overscaled eyes symbolize for the maker and the viewer at the time some sense of spirituality within the individual.
Okay. And then what's this?
When we move ahead a few centuries to the 13th century and look at Chartres Cathedral, one of the great Gothic cathedrals, we see a clear illustration of the symbolism of divine light. The Gothic style with its huge windows letting in all this light filtered through the stained glass was a way of teaching, really, the concept of the divine light breaking into human life.
So it's the thought of a transcendence in the midst of time and space.
Exactly.
The Word made flesh in that sense. I think that there is a quote from Abraham Heschel, great Jewish theologian, that mankind will not perish for want of information, but only for want of appreciation. The beginning of our happiness lies not in understanding that life is without wonder, but that it's worth living only with wonder. What we lack is not a will to believe, but a will to wonder. Maybe we can change that by listening to David Blackburn's rendition of A Christmas Carol by Charles Ives.
Oh, the cradle of a king, hear the angels sing, in excelsis gloria, gloria. Little child of Oh, the cradle of a king, hear the angels sing. In excelsis Gloria, Gloria. From his father's home on high, lo, for us he came to die. Hear the angels sing, Venite adoremus Dominum.
With these lyrics referring to glory, Mark, I think that, again, we have the sense of that light that is beyond shining through in the everyday. And the artists that you're about to share the images with us now have that common theme, too, I understand.
Yes, I think so. The one that we'll look at first is a Raphael 16th century portrait of the Madonna and Child with John the Baptist there on the left. And it illustrates an issue that was very important for Renaissance artists that has only recently been appreciated by art historians, oddly enough, and that is the paradox of the fact that Christ was both fully human and fully divine. At this particular time in history, it was a concern of the theologians to counterbalance a tendency to overemphasize the divinity and underemphasize the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, in fact, the reason we see so many naked Christ childs in order to emphasize the fact that he was, in fact, fully human.
I see. Okay. Our next one by Constable, I think of that quote by Piper, is seeking to bring heaven to earth.
Yes, I think Constable is a preeminent example of what many artists are able to do, and that is to have that sense of wonder in a heightened way, and to be able to recognize the divine and the infinite in the finite. And that spot of light that you see in the distance there is a good example of several 19th century landscape painters in England who were interested to show in their paintings some marriage of heaven and earth, some breaking in of the divine into human life.
And as an Anglican, Constable would have had that sense in a special way.
Constable did indeed. He has been accused of being a pantheist. In fact, he was a very conservative and orthodox Anglican, but he was able to see in the landscape a kind of sermon in every landscape that he looked at, and he painted his paintings as kinds of sermons, really, to illustrate various theological points about the union of matter and spirit.
Okay, and then there is a contrast here, certainly.
Yes, and this 1898 painting by Van Gogh, which is probably one of his most well-known paintings, the Starry Night painting, as it's called, is a good illustration of Van Gogh's similar ability to sense the landscape around him and all of the world around him invitalized by an indwelling spirit. Van Gogh started out as a preacher. He was a failed preacher who became a painter, and he never lost his sense of the divine in creation. And in this particular painting, I think it's highly visible, this swirling, alive kind of sky and landscape that we see here.
And quite a contrast to the Constable. They both have to do with nature, but Constable was closer to the naturalist, and here is obviously a stylized way of bringing out the meaning.
Yes, Van Gogh being much more of a visionary and mystic than Constable.
Okay, I think the next one brings us down to your work.
Yes, my work has to do with this sense of wonder as well, I think, although in a more of a subliminal way. I'm rarely conscious of it in a highly purposeful way, but upon reflection about my work, I've realized that it has a great deal to do with being able to see beauty in all things and to some extent the sacredness of all things. So what I do in my work naturally is to select objects that I find in my environment, found objects that have no worth necessarily in and of themselves in an overt way, but that I take and recycle into artwork. Old pieces of paper, old wine bottle seals, old pieces of fabric, and incorporate them into a work of art so that they have a second life, and that so that their worth is visible, whereas before it was ignored.
Well, I think that we want to thank you for having shared yourself with us this way, your own art as well as your insights into the work of others. And I think that one of the works of art that we'd like to have our viewers take note of is a poem by a local poet, Johnny Martin Hurd, concerning St. Francis, who was the founder of the creche scene, that tradition. Her lyrics go that the winter is sky is heavy, the clouds of snow descend, they swirl about the garden and broken snow plains mend. The fat, round, fluffy robin hops forth. I see him land upon the friend of nature, St. Francis's outstretched hand. And even mid the chill, cold light of darkness on the hill, the massing snow becomes as birds to the gentle form so still. Yet even in the bitter storm he comforts, and I see he for his birds just above me, our Father comforts me. And another bit of poetry that has come to my own consciousness has to do with the very art form that is television and the way it suggests a broader meaning. The medium is the message we've rediscovered now. It's not always what is said, but the way, the means, the how. It's not just what TV shows, but the instantaneous way it goes, cross earth, cross sea, in simultaneity. But this medium is only an echo of one who came long ago, yet who comes today in an even more miraculous way. The Word made flesh, where spirit and form mesh, an image beyond art, in each recreated art. And with that sense of our hearts being moved this time of year, it's important to stop and to take the time to remember the true meaning of the holiday. Because without that Word made flesh, there is little reason to celebrate. So until next week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue, it's our hope that yours may be the most joyous of holidays. And we invite you to enjoy the voices once again of David Blackburn and Jana Holzmeyer, accompanied by Margaret McCornell. Peace be with you.
Ich bin dein, die Liebe soll nicht scheiden, nicht scheiden. Mein Freund ist mein und ich bin dein, die Liebe soll nicht scheiden, nicht scheiden. Mein Freund ist mein und ich bin dein. Mein Freund ist mein, mein Freund ist mein. Dein Liebe soll nicht scheiden. Mein Freund ist mein, ich bin dein. Ich bin dein, und ich bin dein, und ich bin dein. Liebe soll nicht scheiden, die Liebe soll nicht scheiden. Mein Freund ist mein, und ich bin dein, die Liebe soll nicht scheiden. Freude, die viele der Wonne wird sein. Der Freude, die viele der Wonne wird sein.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472